Good morning everyone. My name is Sarah Doherty and I am the Marketing and Event Coordinator here at Hornbill. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar where we will be having a presentation on simplifying the challenges of modern ITSM with Abdi Hamisi, Sales Manager, and Steve Boardman, Product Manager here at Hornbill. Just to inform you, Delegates Auto will be muted during the presentation to help facilitate flow and timekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the GoToMeeting questions facility on the right-hand side of your screen. We will then collate questions and answer them at the end of the presentation. Thank you for taking the time to attend. I will now pass you over to Abdi and Steve.
Thanks, Sarah. Welcome everyone to our webinar, and over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour we hope to take you through quite a lot of content, so we'll get started straight away. Before we get into having a look at the Service Manager application, we thought we'd spend a bit of time just to talk about the challenges and look at some of the areas we've tried to address with bringing Service Manager to market, and hopefully give you some sense as to why we've gone in certain directions with the solution. So looking at some of the challenges, I think for today's purposes we're going to take a look at this from the perspective of Sonya and Graham, two characters that we're going to introduce during the course of the demo, and their respective roles within the organisation would be, around the service manager type role versus the analyst type role, and we'll look at some of the challenges that we see and have heard a lot about from you, our customers, and from the wider prospects that we speak to generally as we go about our daily business, if you like. So having a look at some of these challenges, we've kind of summarised them down into these 5 key areas. The first one is upgrades. Those of you obviously using Supportworks will probably be familiar with this one. It's a perennial challenge, and it's not unique to Supportworks. It's pretty much across the piece when you're using definitely any on-premise software, but in the case of a lot of SaaS solutions, that's also still a problem as well, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Cost of ownership, in today's day and age, every penny counts, and we need to be mindful of that. Complexity, and that's just the overall difficulty level in terms of interacting with the solution and managing that solution from a day-to-day basis. Usability, again, lack of intuitiveness potentially is a challenge that we see a lot, and customizations, again, we do need to customize tools, but not at the expense of upgrades down the road potentially. So those are some of the areas that we're going to take a look at as we go through today. So in terms of looking at those challenges from Sonya's perspective, let's just drill down and have a look at this. And again, this is an exhaustive list, it's just a high-level sort of view of that, but we talked about upgrades. This says upgrades can be expensive and time-consuming. I would probably go as far as to say they are expensive and time-consuming rather. Obviously, this is a challenge that we've seen and experienced with you guys as Hornbill customers, as Supportworks customers for some time now. So the challenge there is simply the fact that the way on-premise software is written, delivered, hosted, every customer ends up with a different version of that software based on the customizations that they make. It becomes very challenging in general terms to do upgrades, and that's something that is difficult to address in the on-premise marketplace, if you like. So we'll come back and look at how we address that from a service manager perspective. Customizations, no tool is 100% going to match your requirements straight out of the box, and one of the benefits of the Supportworks tool is its customization capability. But one of the drawbacks therein is the fact that as you customize the solution and change your forms environment, for example, then oftentimes that needs to be re-implemented when you come to looking to upgrade to the latest version of Supportworks. So obviously anything that can be done to smooth that would be beneficial to anyone's environment. High level and high degree of expertise is typically required around products like Supportworks, and again, not unique to Supportworks. Most tools of its generation are in the same sort of boat in respect to the fact that you need to have not only knowledge about the tool, but the environment that tool sits in, and the integrations and the data that ties into. So anything that reduces that level of overhead is obviously key going forwards. And this one's a popular one with most people that we speak to, whether they're Supportworks customers or prospects that we're engaging with who are looking to replace their current solution. The whole aspect of generating management reports is challenging, and that again is something that people spend an inordinate amount of time trying to generate that report on a Sunday evening for their management team, and anything that eases that burden will work well going forwards. Last but not least, obviously we talked about costs, and in today's environment, financial environment, obviously everyone's under pressure, none more so than IT, to do more with less, and I think that's not going to change. And we could probably do this webinar in 10 years' time, and that'll still be relevant. But I think in today's economy, it's key that we try to look at ways of driving up productivity and enable IT to show value back to the business very easily. So from an analyst perspective, what are the key challenges? So Graham, in this case, is perhaps the analyst that's also responsible for looking after Supportworks. I'm sure there's a few of you guys on the call today, the admin, the super user. One of the bits of feedback we get daily from customers is the tool is powerful, but it's not particularly intuitive by today's standards. And what does that mean? Well, most tools we use today are on the mobile. They're web-based tools, and Supportworks is of a generation where obviously you need a client and various other aspects in order to use the tool. But it's just simply written in a time before cloud and mobile came along, and there's a bit of a change in the way we expect to engage with software and technology today. So that's something that's not easily reflected in Supportworks. As far as being able to work from anywhere, that kind of leads on from the previous point. We all expect to have a mobile app, a mobile device at hand to pick up and do work wherever we are. It seems to be the way of the world these days. It's very hard to get away from your work, even in the evenings when you've got a mobile device. But again, it's the sort of thing that people expect these days, and that's something that isn't readily available on Supportworks. And a lot of the tools that are built in the same sort of genre, if you like. High degree of technical knowledge we talked about a moment ago. The challenge here is that Graham, in this instance, is the guy that has to have that knowledge, and it's not simply just about Supportworks. It's about the infrastructure, because every support call that you have with us typically is an engagement that needs to figure out where that issue lies. Is it with our software, or is it with your environment? And that degree of knowledge and expertise sometimes sits beyond the admin person. You have to then engage your SQL DBA or your AD person in order to get to the bottom of that challenge, if you like. So there's lots of complexity involved in supporting a tool like Supportworks, and that adds time and effort into any resolution of any issues or problems that you encounter. Again, this is something that perhaps we've seen and observed ourselves more so than customers come to us with, but one of the things we've noticed over the last little while, especially when we sat down to look at how we were going to take forward our products and solutions and offerings, was the challenge that, for the most part, we do our service management job in Supportworks or whatever service desk tool we're using, but we tend to step out of that tool to do all our communication. So we go into email or other informal collaboration channels to have those conversations. And the challenge there is that all of the knowledge and the expertise that you exchange in those dialogue and those conversations is typically lost or blind to the service desk. So you don't have any way of kind of reusing that knowledge. So we refer to that as tacit knowledge. So one of the things we've really tried to look at is how to engage and do that communication within the service desk tool, rather than having to step out and lose that information, that tacit knowledge. And we'll come and have a look at that in the context of Steve's demo in a little while. And last but not least, obviously, the overall cost and time spent on upgrading Supportworks or any other traditional service desk tool is quite immense in that respect. And typically we put off upgrades because they are complicated, they are time consuming, they do demand a lot of resource, and as a consequence you end up falling further and further behind. So if we can reduce that amount of time, or perhaps even remove that burden altogether, that means that as an analyst you can spend more time actually working on higher value initiatives. Okay. So done with the challenges, let's have a look at what we've done to effectively move that whole conversation forward. So one of the things we had tried to address in looking at our next generation service desk solution was, how do we get rid of many of those challenges and ideally make life a lot easier for you as a customer. And so what we came up with was the Hornbill Service Manager solution. Now, Hornbill Service Manager itself is an application that sits on the Hornbill platform, and the Hornbill platform itself is a collaborative application, or a collaborative platform that works in the same way as perhaps Yammer or any of those sort of collaboration tools that you might use outside of work to do in terms of engaging you, connecting you with your people that you want to talk to, whether they're experts or groups of experts that specifically might be able to help you with your job. And Steve will show you a little bit more of that as we go through. But in essence, the Service Manager app is where you do your service management. The collaboration platform is where the Service Manager app sits, but that allows you to do all your communication, if you like, and that hopefully ties back when we show you the demo. So what does Hornbill Service Manager offer you? Well, in simple terms, it offers you a solution that allows you to better share knowledge and ideas to connect and collaborate globally with your colleagues and your experts within your organisation. It should therefore boost your productivity and most importantly allows you to work from anywhere. In terms of the solution, it's built around a sort of very familiar modern interface, which you'll find pretty intuitive. It will look and feel a lot like some of the consumer apps you may use outside of work. And the benefit of this is that through that collaborative working, you're always up to date with all the information that's important to you in real time across both your web client and all your native mobile apps. That leads us kind of onto the point that you can work from anywhere, on any device, at any time, but most importantly in any language. And again, this was a challenge, particularly in Supportworks, around multilingual capabilities. So the tool that we're going to show you today has some very good capabilities in that respect. I think at last count we support 187 languages, so it's quite in depth in terms of the capability around language. So, key thing, it's a cloud-based tool, so it's probably worth just putting that on the table. So if any of you are expecting to see an offering today that's going to be installed on premise, that's not what Service Manager is. It's very much a cloud-based solution, and we really do emphasize the word service. It is a service, not just a piece of software that's hosted for you in the cloud that needs to be updated on sort of annual basis, if you like, to get the benefits. What we're offering you is basically an always up-to-date service that you don't have to do any updates or upgrades on. Effectively, it upgrades itself automatically. The benefit of that is that you never have to undertake any upgrades. Updates are always automatic, and the real upshot from that is that effectively you're always up to date with the latest features. So as the product evolves, as we develop new features, and that development works on the basis of continuous deployment. As soon as the new feature is ready, we check it in, it gets pushed out to you, it lands in your system. All our customers are on the same version, so everyone has access to the new features immediately, and everyone's on the same version of software, which means we can spend our time building new features instead of looking backwards, if you like. There's no service disruption, so those updates are seamless, and you typically will just see the new functionality appear. We provide training in the product in line, and again Steve will show you that as to when we put in the new feature. Best of all, from the Supportworks perspective, your customizations keep working. So again, you can customize the solution. There are boundaries to that customization, and we think they're quite broad anyway, so you can customize forms, business processes, and a whole manner of other stuff as you can in Supportworks. But the benefit here is any customizations you make are guaranteed to keep working regardless of the updates that we make to the solution in terms of adding new features over time. Last but not least, before I hand over to Steve, we have a free migration package, which we'll come back and talk a bit more about at the end. But in essence, we offer all our customers the option for a 30-day free trial, which gives you access to the solution for free for 30 days. During that 30-day period, we'll actually assign a product specialist to you, a consultant, who will work with you to actually migrate you across in terms of your data, your integrations, and any configurations that you need to bring over. And at the end of that period, you have then the choice to decide whether this is a solution you want to take forward or not. But either way, we'll do all of that work for free. So we'll come back and talk about that in a little while, but at this point I'm going to hand over to Steve, who's going to take you through a quick presentation of what the solution looks like and how it works.
Great, thanks Abdi, and good morning everyone. So as Abdi said, we're just going to spend maybe sort of 20 or 25 minutes just having a quick look at Service Manager from a number of different perspectives. We'll have a look at the end user experience, we'll have a look at what the analysts and our service delivery managers usage looks like, but also how we administer this and how sort of simplistic that can be as well. So we'll just start by having a look at the self-service experience, and I've just brought up here if you like, the out-of-the-box sort of options. Now, the self-service does support single sign-on. We can provide the portal in multiple languages. It can be branded and it can be customized codelessly through the admin tool. Just by way of an example, I'll just switch here to one of our customers that has branded that and customized that themselves. Now, when a user accesses self-service, they're going to be presented with a tailored personal experience based on the services that they are subscribed to. And this is very important. It doesn't necessarily just have to be limited to IT service management here. If you're using Supportworks or you're looking to expand the use across finance or marketing or HR or facilities, etc., you can still promote a single portal where your customers can go to access the services that those different business functions offer. But if we have a look at Steve here, he's logged in, and across the middle here we'll see some bulletins or news that's going across, and this is all in relation to the services that Steve is specifically subscribed to, so he's not getting bombarded with news which is irrelevant to things that he's not interested in. If we look below that, we can see 3 services here which Steve has favouritised, and they're the ones that are presented on his homepage. But we can here look at all the services that Steve is subscribed to, again across both IT, facilities, people services, management services if he's a department head, all of those options depending on what you've configured. Steve can quickly see which of those services are impacted, there may be issues with, and he can also have a look at ones where he's got active instance or service requests raised against them. But if we come back to the impacted and we have a look at our home working service, so this obviously might be provided to those that we allow to work from home and access our VPN. So if we drill down and have a look at that particular service, what have we got available to us? Well, we saw from the home page those news bulletins coming in letting us know about a service availability issue. Well, here if we drill down and have a look at that in a bit more detail, we can see the specifics about that service availability, perhaps when we can expect an update. We can see that there is a problem or a known error already raised against that particular service with the details and possibly workaround information if that can be published out, all in non-technical terminology for our users, but also providing them with a simple Me Too option which allows them to associate themselves to that particular known issue. That will add them as a connection or an impacted user, and it will also then include them in any ongoing communication to those impacted users relating to that known issue via email as that workaround or then is presented or as a solution is provided. That could be pushed out automatically to the users who've associated themselves to that known issue. Hopefully here we're looking to reduce the amount of repeat incidents that are logged for the issues that we're already aware of. Now to support the known issues and the bulletins here, we can also push out information, so typical issues that you have reported when you've looked at your analytics and the types of tickets that you're receiving. Here we can start to say, well, can we address some of those by pushing out knowledge and information to help them solve the issue before they actually have to raise a request or ask a question. So here it could be about rebooting the VPN after connection timeouts. It could be sharing useful videos or content hyperlinked off to resources that are elsewhere, and also seeing how many times our colleagues are looking at this information and whether they found it useful or not. Obviously we can see any tickets that we've got that are active or closed against that particular service, but if we're not able to associate ourselves to an existing issue, not able to self-help, we may get to the point where actually we want to raise a request for the relevant support team. And here we introduce the concept of our request catalogue. And this is really a way of actually saying, well, if we provide the service, can we define exactly what options we can provide the subscribers of that service or allow them to do? So here we can see a number of options. One could be, well, if I'm a new employee to the business and I haven't actually got my self set up for VPN access, maybe I want to request and arrange that with the support team. Or maybe I simply don't know where my issue sits, so I might want to arrange a convenient time for someone in the support team to call me back. Or if I actually want to report an issue, we can provide that option as well. Now this really just takes away the complexity from the end user's experience of logging a ticket, because what we don't need to do is present them with a category structure about what they need to do. We can sit behind each of these options a business process which will route the ticket to the relevant team. We could possibly also predefine the priority and the service level obligations that will associate that based on the definitions that we've created here. But if I just take this VPN access issue, for example, here, all we're presented with is a simple, I suppose someone would refer to as an e-form. We use the concept of progressive capture, where we provide just the questions we need to ask the customer to get the information to raise the ticket in the first place. So we'll just put here, unable to connect, and submit that through. Now on doing so, and associating possibly any of my assets that this relates to, so it could be from my Dell rather than from my iMac, I just go ahead and log that issue. On doing so, I'm immediately presented with a graphical heads-up display of where that ticket exists. I can see what stages need to go through to resolve this for me. I can see that it's been picked up and assigned to the relevant team when it was logged, and also what needs to happen towards the resolution. So it keeps me informed of what's happening at all times. I've got the ability to add updates, add attachments, review the information that I've submitted, and any updates that the support team provide that are marked as customer facing will be visible to me on here as well. Okay. Coming back up though and having a look at, not just reporting issues or raising incidents, we might also want to use this to provision equipment or onboard new starters or any of those sort of typical service requests that we want to fulfill. So if we have a look at our mobile option on here, again, we'll see that there's no known issues against this service at the moment, but maybe I'm interested in what our corporate policy is regarding mobiles and whether these are provided or what options I have, what are the things I need to be aware of. All of this information can be pushed out in FAQs. If I'm happy with that, then I want to go ahead and request a new mobile. Again, I'm just presented with progressive capture, and it's just specific to this particular request. In this example, it's just giving me the options to request a mobile from the list of mobile devices that are applicable. I might choose an iPhone 6, I might have a preference for a certain amount of memory, maybe monthly. I'm quite a heavy user of this because I'm out and about, so I want to keep that option up. Doesn't need to be 4G enabled. Whatever questions you want to ask. Reason for mobiles for lost old one. Hopefully people provide a little bit more information. Bang, that then again raises that ticket. We're presented with that heads-up display. Maybe in this occasion there's management approval that needs to be sought to get this. Maybe we need to source this from a supplier. All of this can be represented in that heads-up display and clearly articulated back to the end user via the portal. So that really just gives you a sort of feel for some of the key features of the portal. And if we just switch context now and come back in and have a look at maybe an analyst view of the world, or perhaps more importantly, what underpins everything that we've just seen from the end user's experience. So I'm logged in here as Graham, one of our analysts, and I'm presented with a news feed, which I'll come back to in a second. But all of those requests that we've just logged here, 195, the service request, I've received notifications about. I could have received those notifications via email. I can pick those notifications up on my mobile because we have a native iOS and Android app available to you, but you're always going to be informed about new requests, updates to requests in your preference for the mobile, web client or email. But we were looking at the various services that were available to Steve, and we can drill down here and actually have a look at some of that capability. So I mentioned it doesn't just have to be limited to IT services. It could be facilities or management services or HR in the context of my benefits. But if we have a look at that home working service that we've seen on the portal, we can see here that that service is in a catalogue status, so it is available. We can see which of our users are subscribed to that service. We can see the options in terms of how we subscribe them. In Service Manager, you have the ability to define your own groups rather than just being perhaps limited to department, all, and individuals. We can also see the availability information about that service, but also which of our support teams actually support that particular service. And that's really important when we think about which of my teams are allowed to see requests that are raised against that service. Who can I assign my requests to when they've been raised against this service? So if visibility and some degree of segregation is important to you in the teams that you have or the different functions in your business, this will be a key part in that design. But if we have a look at some of the other options here, we can configure whether we're making instance and service request options available against that particular service. We're also able to define or design the forms and the custom fields that we might want to use when we're looking at the incident form for this particular service. So this really more or less replaces the need to have in Supportworks terms multi-data dictionaries with multiple incident forms, multiple service request logging forms. What we're doing here is actually giving the option against this service to configure individual forms specific to that service, and those forms will be presented when you raise an incident against that particular service or raise a service request against that service. So is true of things like setting the relevant categories for the instance on that service, what email templates to use, what individual actions you want the analyst to have when they're working on tickets raised against that service. And then we see the things like the request catalogue, where we can see which progressive capture, or in Supportworks terms, self-service wizard or eForms are going to ask the questions, and what business process is going to be used for fulfillment. We have lots of other options across here, like which CIs or assets underpin that service and the ability to visualize that graphically. The ability to push out that information, the FAQs, the bulletins, and to do so not only in a single language, but if it's important to us, Do we want to push that out into other languages as well? And using the Google Translate service, all the hard work can be done for us, and each individual working their local language will see the relevant version of that FAQ when they log in. Finally, here we have the ability here to configure and customize the bulletins that we want to push out with our own backgrounds, our own language. It supports wiki markup, so you can be quite creative with hyperlinks and various other content in here as well. But I did talk briefly here when we were looking at our request configuration about business processes and progressive capture underpinning what we offer here. So I'll just switch very quickly to our admin tool, and we can see here that when I'm looking at Service Manager, one of the apps that's on our platform, we have the option to come in and configure the business processes. Now we do ship with out-of-the-box incident, known error, problem processes, etc., change processes, but we give you the ability for you to come in and either edit those or create your own. Now we try here not to be at all prescriptive in terms of how you might want to work with your business processes. So we don't dictate, for argument's sake, that you have to use service level timers on your tickets, or that you have to use a fix and a response target, or when they should start, or what constitutes them being achieved. All of that is entirely up to you, and you can build into your processes. And you'll build them using a canvas drag and drop environment, where I can simply come in, and if I want to add or extend options, I'll come in and choose to add a task or an automated action or an authorization or whatever that may well be. I can then simply split my process down into the various stages, and those stages are represented by the graphical heads-up display, which we saw on the self-service portal, but we'll also look at through the Analyst View. So in this particular change process here, we can see a number of actions that occur with decisions. We've got checkpoints, we've got routing and assignment and the sending of emails. We've got the concept of tasks with various configurable outcomes, with a logic that will branch accordingly. We've got authorizations, we've got the concepts of outcomes including things like expiry, so we can set tasks to be valid for a period of time and then set logic that will happen if those expire. We can set up checkpoints, we can update the ticket automatically, we can integrate with third-party tools from here, and we can also have what we call suspend actions and a variety of other options that are available to you. So that's really about the fulfillment side of the processes, but if we come back up and have a look at our progressive capture, this is all really concerned with addressing the challenges of logging tickets in the first place. And as you've seen via the self-service portal, when we raised the home working issue or we raised the request for a new mobile, it was either a single form or a combination of forms that are logically grouped together that guide the user through that experience of logging the ticket. Very similar, if you will, to if you've ever booked a holiday online or you bought insurance online. It's just one question at a time and a logical branching to guide you through the information you need to capture. So if we take that sort of a step further here, we can see individual progressive captures for all the different types of requests that you might have, or ones where we can combine that logic. So on here we've got a form again built graphically where each of the blue nodes just denotes a question, and depending on the outcome it will go to another question. So on here, if we're going to raise a desktop support issue and it's going to be an incident, maybe I want to ask for the category, the priority, maybe the asset and which site they're at. However, if they were wanting to report a finance issue, maybe we've created our own custom questions, and the same could be true, for argument's sake, if they were raising a new starter request, and we can define our own questions. Okay. The key objective here is moving away from what I suppose some people would describe as the logging forms looking like a spreadsheet on steroids with lots of fields and not really understanding what to work. So we can build the logic here and we can hide all of this complexity from our end users. So with that in mind, let's go back up to Graham's world, and we've had a little bit of a look at the services that we offer, and we've looked at the assets that underpin them, and we can pull those assets in through CSV imports. There's an ability to schedule those assets and CIs to come in on a regular basis from tools like SCCM or Sotero or any of your on-premise applications that might be using. But let's have a look at Graham's world in the context of his requests or what he normally works with. So here we have a look at the request list, and this is context sensitive in regards to the teams that Graham is a member of, or the requests which Graham's teams, or the services, sorry, that Graham's teams support. So we'll only see what's important to him. Graham here has the rights to work with incidents, service request problems and known errors and changes. If he doesn't have the rights to work with changes, this icon isn't visible to him, nothing is greyed out. We do ship with a number of default options that allow me to look at those request types by individual teams that I belong to, or all of my teams, and the list will refresh accordingly. So I could set this to look at all of my ticket types for all of my teams and set that as my home view, and that would be my preferred view. Within the context of these default views, I can also come in and use the quick filter on the left-hand side here, which will then filter those results back to either the VPN, topic of VPN, or if I'm interested as a manager in what Brian's working on, I can filter this back to just show me Brian's work. Or if I'm on the phone to a customer, maybe I'm interested in what tickets Anna's currently got open. So it's a multifunctional quick filter that you've got here. What you also have, though, as an individual analyst is the ability to manage and control and build your own views. And this is a little bit different to Supportworks, where really there was a requirement or a necessity on the system administrator to be the one that would create your data dictionaries, would edit those data dictionaries, would create the views that your analysts could work within. And there was a reliance really on that individual or that team to have an understanding of how that configuration works, or possibly have an understanding of how the back-end database structure worked and how the open call table works and how I define those views. All of that complexity is alleviated here in Service Manager by simply giving each of your analysts the ability for a simple clause builder to come in and build and construct their own views. So again, I don't need to understand anything about the underlying data table structure. I simply come in and say priority is this, status is that, ticket type is another. And if I want to extend that and say, well, just show me the high priority instance against a particular service that we support, I can come in here and say, okay, we'll just do that against the desktop support services. Nice and easy and intuitive to work that way. And just to extend that a step further, we can also give each of the individual analysts their own personal dashboard and the ability to create the content they want to put onto their personal dashboard. So on here, I can leverage those views or those conditions that we've defined here to create some charts that are going to have a look at my high priority instance that I've set up, because I might be interested in looking at which of my teams are responsible for those tickets, or which individuals are actually looking after them. Or if I wanted to look at it the other way, I might say, well, actually, which of my customers are impacted? So we could simply create a new chart based on this, maybe have it as a donut chart, and then decide to filter those results by customer, have a quick preview of that, and we can see here that it's quite a fair split at the moment. There's no individual that's particularly impacted by any of those more than anybody else. So once we've got all of those charts, if we come back to our request list, we can choose to toggle between the traditional request list view and your personal dashboard, exposing all of those charts that you've just created and that one that we've set up here. Now they are your own individual dashboards, so if you want to move things around, reorder them, if you've got a preference on extending these out and making them smaller, larger, what have you, that's entirely up to you. All of these support drill down immediately out of the box, either into the entire data set, or if we're interested, we can just filter that down to a particular subset, look at that information, and if we want to drill into the tickets, we can. If we want to export it, and again, what data we want to export, we can take all of that information out. So that's all available to us. Okay. So at this point, let's have a think about actually the analyst experience of raising a ticket. We've looked at self-service. I've introduced the concept of progressive capture in here, but how does that actually play out? Well, before I do that, just to really touch on, self-service is one way of raising a ticket. Raising it as an analyst is the second. The concept of having your shared mailboxes embedded and available on the platform is there, and if you like, is the same functionality that you'll be familiar with in Supportworks, as is the capability to use the equivalent of the email autoresponder for automatically logging tickets or automatically applying email updates to existing tickets. All of those options are available to you on the platform, and using our APIs, raising requests from third-party tools or updating requests from third-party tools is all achievable. So we'll come on and have a look at actually raising a ticket, and again we've tried to address a particular problem here which we've had some feedback from Supportworks, but perhaps more generally as well, which is the one associated with picking the phone up to the customer and knowing which form I should immediately open to go in to start recording the information they're telling me. Is it the instant logging form, the service request logging form? What happens if I get halfway down the instant logging form and then realise in fact it should be a service request? Do I have to back out or maybe ask the customer to repeat that information? So what we've done here is actually introduce the concept of progressive capture and just raise new. Maybe ask the customer some questions before we actually make the decision about the request type. So here we'll use myself as an example here. So Steve calls up, I resolve his information, I can make sure it's the right person. First thing I perhaps want to do is understand, is Steve calling about one of his existing tickets? If he is, here's all those active tickets, I can drill in, give him the update, that's all good, and we'll move on. If he's actually wanting to raise a new request, well, what services do we provide to Steve? What could he be calling about? So on here we can see a number of those services that are specific to Steve, and we could see those request catalog items that we've defined either against our Mac support service or our home working service, mobiles, etc. It's entirely up to you what you expose. But in this example, I'm simply going to follow a very generic desktop support example. So rather than leveraging presetting of categories and priorities, etc., maybe I want my analyst to actually ask those questions. So it's entirely up to you how that configuration is set. So I'm just going to follow the common theme that we have here, which is a VPN issue, unable to connect. So what we're doing really is just going through, gathering the information, associating the services, taking a description of the issue, and maybe we know enough at this point to actually say, well, it is an incident, it's a break fix issue, or it's a request for something. Now, playing devil's advocate here, I might suggest, well, actually, my assessment of that is it's actually a change. If I follow that particular route, it's going to guide me through the questions that are related to that change path. However, having done so, it's obvious that wasn't the right way to go, so I'll come back up, change that to incident. Now I'm presented with all the information that the incident route needs me to capture, and that could be, again, categorizing. And again, if we don't want our analyst to categorize, we can use those request catalog options. Maybe I can set the priority, in my opinion, associate one or multiple assets to this request. Maybe the site that this user has the issue from is working from home, it might not be relevant. And we go ahead and we raise that ticket in Service Manager. Excuse me. So here we can see this is prefixed with IN. You have the flexibility to prefix each of the different requests with whatever you like. It could include your letters from your company or today's date or the number of tickets you've raised today. That is entirely up to you. But when we open that request, we're then looking at that graphical heads-up display that represents the fulfillment process that's running. We can see within each of the stages what checkpoints have been achieved. We can see in the timeline here that the business process has routed the ticket to a particular team, fired off a confirmation email automatically. Based on the priority, it's automatically started the fix or response target, whatever I've set up at this occasion. But in this particular stage, it's also waiting for someone in that first line team to take ownership. And what it's done, again, driven by the business process, is taken me in context across my action bar to where that next action needs to occur. So in context, I can come in here and say, I'm logged in as Graham, I'm going to go and pick that request up. And in doing so, it marks that checkpoint has been achieved, move on to the next stage, and if we flag that as being a customer-facing update, then the customer would see that as well. Now, across the middle, there are lots of manual options that are available to you, and I'm not going to drill down them all here, but if we take some of the common things that we might want to do, like maybe cutting and pasting an image, so if I just take a print screen here and put the error message in there, we can cut and paste those in. All of those updates then go into our timeline, which is the equivalent, if you like, of your call diary entries, but it's all in line, it's chronologically ordered, and I can just work my way through that. We can schedule callbacks, we can drag and drop one or multiple attachments, or obviously look at our file structure. We can search for and link related tickets. In this example, I might want to look for any other VPN issues that we're aware of, that are problems and that are still currently open. I can do a search for that and get results. Now, on associating myself or linking myself to this particular problem, a couple of things can happen. One is that we now see a linked request section has been exposed, but also if there's already a workaround available on that problem, that's cascaded down to me, and as the incident owner, I can review that possible solution, accept or reject it. It's entirely up to me. And if we work that through from the problem manager's point of view, what we can actually do is go looking for incidents that might be affected by our problem, associate those incidents to that problem, and again cascade down the possible solution to that. And as we saw on the portal, we can publish out those known issues and allow end users to associate themselves to cut down on repeat incidents. Other options we've got there are actually raising things like linked requests. So I might want to raise a problem or a change, and we'll come back to that in a second. Changing the customer, assignment options, escalating, sending emails out, changing assets, etc., etc. All the sort of things you'd expect. But what we've also got is the ability to use custom buttons, and those custom forms that we've designed in the service form would be visible here. But our business process on this occasion has actually kicked off a task for someone to look into this desktop support issue. And this task could have been assigned to an individual, a group or a role, all of which will receive notifications about that activity, again, through email, through the Hornbill notifications, which again they can pick up on their mobile. So on completing that task, a number of things would happen. This process would move forward, we'd stop the time, there's all of that automation we can put in place. But a couple of things I just want to cover off before we move off from this particular incident is the ability to complement the traditional approaches of reassigning a ticket when I've done all I can towards the resolution, or creating a formal task to ask another team to do something for me. Perhaps what I might want to do is actually drop in a subject matter expert. So on here I can add in members. So in here I might want to add Rosemary in as an expert here. Now maybe Rosemary doesn't normally have the rights to look at my ticket or my team's tickets. We can elevate her rights to do so just in the context of this particular request to get her assistance and her support. We can go ahead and we can mention Rosemary. Can you look at this, please? This will allow Rosemary to receive a targeted communication, again, through the notification system that's inbuilt and picked up on her mobiles, letting her know that she's been added as a member and also the assistance we're looking for. We can also extend that out by allowing you to add additional customers as what we call connections, so you can add them as logged on behalf of or interested parties in this particular request as well. But we'll just go ahead very quickly, complete that task that we had in here, say that we've resolved the issue, maybe record the time that we've spent on this. But on doing so, as I mentioned earlier, a number of things are going to happen. One is that it moves the ticket into a resolve state, stops the timer, completes the process, and in this particular example, it's also automated the firing of a resolution email off to the customer. So all of that can either be manually or automatically done. Just jumping forward a little bit here and raising a link change off the back of this incident, we can see here that we can cascade up the information we know about this particular change, link the incident from it, use our own custom forms to maybe record the different type, the impact, and these are really just example questions that you might ask, associate more assets, all of those options, again, just using that very simplistic progressive capture experience. Once that change is raised, we can see the change prefix, and again, we drop into a very familiar looking form, but on this occasion, the heads-up display is representing the change process as opposed to the incident process, and that will govern the behavior and the steps that we go through on here. So again, the first thing I'm going to do very quickly is just take ownership of that particular change, and we'll notice again that a task has been created. Now I'm just going to step through a couple of these and say that maybe the first thing the change team want to do is actually look at the information to decide whether it's worth spending time on. On this occasion I've marked it as valid. Maybe that then jumps into things like impact assessments, and we might want parallel impact assessments from different interested parties in the business, and we can do that. We can create our own definable outcomes. We can set the logic to say, for argument's sake, if it was medium or high, that a backout plan is needed, or if it's just low, that we can jump forward and just go through to maybe an approval gate or whatever that might be. So in this example, I've done that, and we've loaded in multiple approvers. We've also included in the information that's passed out to the approvers the summary of the change, the impact information, the risk information, just to give them some context if they didn't actually have the rights to look at the full change request. All of those options are available. But the reason I've just jumped very quickly through to this particular point is to introduce another concept which provides a different dimension or a different view for our change managers, our service desk managers, those that are involved in procurement. It gives you the way of actually visualizing the whole life cycle of your particular process. So we'll use change as the example here. So drilling into this particular board, we've split our change process down into the various life cycle stages that are important to you. So on here I can very quickly at a glance see which of my changes are in the incoming, which ones have been assessed, which ones have been marked as or been reviewed and have gone forward to the change of the CAB team, which ones have been approved by the CAB, are currently in progress or being reviewed. Now this is a real-time view that can be again driven by that business process engine. So automatically as we complete the tasks and the actions on the request, it can automatically move those changes from one stage to another. And we can see here in this example that the change 197 that we looked at has automatically found its way to CAB. That's notwithstanding the ability to drag and drop if need be, but in my opinion this works really well to give you that real-time view. But it can be used for incident management. Maybe we want a board that's going to look and show me all the changes, all the incidents that are going to breach today or in the next couple of hours. Obviously supported by email notifications, visual representations on the request list, reassignment options, increases in priority, all of the standard things that you would expect on here. But it's just really looking for the applications you can use this in, so whether it's a procurement process and those that have been received, approved, or out with supplier, or whether we simply want to have a look at an internal development process where we've got acceptance testing, developer reviews, all of those types of stages. It's a very quick and easy way to visualize this. But we'll just come back, we'll just come back to that change that we were working on. As a member of the particular CAB here, I'm going to go ahead and make my decision, and I'm going to accept that particular change. On doing so, it might again prompt us to do another action like suspend and schedule this request. But what it's also done, if we come right back up to our newsfeed, is it's actually posted about that change onto a change management workspace. So this is probably a good opportunity to bring this right back to this collaborative IT service management message here, which is really one about letting the platform, along with the application, push information to you that you're interested in, and give you a mechanism to collaborate with your colleagues around that subject matter that's important to you. So here in our newsfeed we can see updates to changes that we're interested in, updates to tickets that we're following, documents that have been shared with you, notifications about problems, ongoing discussions, the ability for our colleagues to work in their local language again, and for me to see the information that they're posting about. Now, why am I seeing that particular set of information in the newsfeed? Well, it comes down to my membership of things like the workspaces. So we've created a change management workspace, or maybe a problem management workspace, where we're posting information out. I'm seeing updates to this particular ticket, if I drill into it, simply because I've chosen to follow that ticket. Very similar to the watch lists or queues that you'll be familiar with in Supportworks. But we can use these for other purposes as well. You might want, for argument's sake, to have a first-line FAQ workspace where you bring together your analysts in the first-line team, the second-line team, give them a forum in which they can ask questions or post information. Maybe their customers are having an issue which they can't resolve. So in here, in this example, James can post and say, look, I've got a problem with deleting folders. Post it in here. Everyone will be notified in that group. They can all, feeling particularly helpful, come back in and provide solutions. Those solutions, again, they can do in their local language. But probably most importantly, we can get validation from our co-workers or colleagues that that's a good answer, and I can go ahead and use that information. Now, all of that is great in the here and now, but what it really does is talk about or leverage all that communication that maybe traditionally happens outside of the tool in email or in discussions by the coffee machine, and bring it back into the tool so that we can capture it and reuse it. So what we mean by that is if in the future, through the search bar at the top, I wanted to look for any VPN-related posts that we might have, because we've had that conversation in the tool, that information is reusable. And here I might want to sort this down or filter this down just to updates from this particular workspace, but I might only be interested in what Joe has to say because he's our expert in that area, and I'm only interested in things that have been posted in the last month because we've changed or updated our software since then. So you can really be specific about these searches. Again, another workspace, another question, an answer's provided, it's been validated, I can trust that and go ahead and use that to help me resolve my issue. So that's all very much about tacit knowledge and about, if you like, unstructured knowledge. Service Manager and the platform also comes with a document management app that sort of caters for the more formalized documents, and here I'm just doing a document tag search for a change management process. Here we can see a result, we can drill into that document here, and we can see a number of things. First and foremost, Harry's popped up to let me know about some new features. So Abdi talked about our continuous deployment methodology that we use, and we're continually pushing out new features. Harry is our in-app trainer that will let you know about new features, and you can either go off to our wiki or look at the videos that we'll post, but once you've got it, you move on. But these documents you can share with your colleagues, you can upload revisions. As we've seen, we can apply tags. That helps from searching, but it also helps with creating self-organizing collections. And obviously, once we're happy that it's in a publishable state, we can push those out to a wider community. So this is really just an example of some of that line of business applications that sit alongside Service Manager, that might be our Customer Manager, Document Manager, Configuration Manager, some of the options we've got there. Okay. So just two last things that I just want to cover off on here are the analytics and the options that we've got available for reporting, but also possibly a quick look at our mobile, and then I'm going to hand back to Andy. So let's just go back into the admin side here and remember, if you will, that we've looked at the personal dashboards that our analysts can work with, which are obviously non-technical. And here we can look at our traditional reports and our analytics. Here the platform is provided with out-of-the-box trending engine, which allows you to build your own measures. Measures are things like, how many tickets are we resolving on a daily basis? What's our average resolution time, percentage first time fix? But more importantly, set targets for those measures and then see how you're performing against those measures on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. What's the trend? With those measures defined, maybe create widgets to actually present those measures, or create traditional charts or lists or target counters. Promote those widgets up onto dashboards and maybe share those dashboards with individuals. Or if you wanted to, maybe daisy chain multiple dashboards together and have those dashboards transitioning through. So this is probably the quickest and easiest way to give you a feel for the output that you can get here. So we'll just move through a couple of these dashboards so you can see here traditional charts, target counters, information about tickets that haven't been touched, as well as targets, measures, etc., etc. So all of those are available on there, notwithstanding the ability to still create your traditional reports if need be. So the final thing I'm just going to do before I hand back to Abdi is just see if we can bring up the mobile on here. So bear with me 2 seconds and bring this up.
Just while Steve brings that up, just a couple of questions through so far. So if anyone's got any further questions, please feel free to post them into the GoToMeeting, and we'll come back and respond to those just shortly.
Fantastic, thanks Abdi. So really it's just a comment on here that there is as I mentioned, a native iOS and Android apps that are available to you from your analyst perspective. Let's have a quick look at the iOS version. So on here we have access to the news feeds, all the information, the updates about that change that's just been logged, notifications about new tickets that have been assigned or anything else that I'm interested in. Access to my instant messaging conversations that are in here, access to your colleagues, organisational information that you support, the workspaces that you're members of, so those problem changes workspaces, access to your documents, so wherever you happen to be, if you want to review your change management or a policy document on a particular subject, all of those are available to you on the palm of your hand, as is the ability to access your requests in relation to the teams that you are a member of. So on here we can see the tickets within the filter that I've got set up here. I can go ahead and if I want to, I can filter back using the quick filter that we saw from the request list, or I can go in and refine my criteria, so the requests I'm interested in and the views that I want to work with and the teams that I'm a member of, all those options are available to me. If we drill down into the individual tickets here, let's take 182 for argument's sake, we've got visibility of the request information. We can obviously reassign, we can resolve and move these forward, we can review the history of all these requests. In here we can come in and utilise some of the mobile functionality that's available to us, so if we want to take a picture and upload that, we can do so. If we want to comment on an existing post, then we can come in here, use a comment, maybe use the dictaphone capability in the mobile to upload that message rather than having to type it in if you've got big fingers like myself. But really that's just to give you a quick flavour for the mobile that's on there. I'm just going to pass back to Abdi now just to sort of summarise for us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. So a very quick whistle-stop tour really of the solution. I'm sure you'll all have lots of questions off the back of that, but we'll be happy to take those either at the end of today's session or through your RM. We'll happily engage with you and take a bit more time to go through any specific questions you have. So just to recap, how does Hornbill make Graham's life easier? Remember, Graham was in the context of the admin and analyst type user here. So I'm sure you'll all agree we've showed you a very powerful, modern, intuitive ITSM tool there with plenty of capability to boot. We've showed you a much easier way of finding and connecting and communicating, if you like, with your subject matter experts in real time, wherever you are, but most importantly, actually capturing that data in such a way that it becomes reusable and tapping into that tacit knowledge that is all around you in your organisation. We've showed you a way of being able to communicate across language barriers to help to resolve those complex issues that you might come across. And most importantly, again, we haven't really showed you this, but we've talked about the whole concept of continuous deployment and the fact that we're pushing out updates all the time, so the tool is always up to date and you can spend more time fixing and implementing improvements inside your organisation rather than updating your service desk tool. How does it Hornbill make Sonia's life better as a service delivery manager or service desk manager? And we guess in summary, she can put together the best possible team, make sure they're informed, make sure that they're getting the job done quicker, and she can do that irrespective of where they sit in terms of location or what language they speak, because of through the collaboration capabilities that we offer here, that makes that whole communication and sharing of knowledge and ideas much, much simpler and happen in real time as well. She can be assured that obviously there's a powerful business process engine that sits underneath this that orchestrates what you're looking to do in terms of your business processes, but also make sure that you're not pushing all that complexity down to the analysts or even the end users, because we simplify the view with a heads-up display to allow people to understand where they are in that process, which they may not understand end to end, but they can certainly see where they are and where they sit today in regards to that process. And again, through the analytics package that Steve just ended on there, we can obviously see that you can drive better business decisions through more informed and better insight into what's going on within your organisation around the analytics that we offer through the Backer Service Manager. So what next? I guess kind of summing up here in terms of the last couple of minutes, how much does Hornbill Service Manager cost? It always sounds better in Italian, so I've stuck it up there in Italian. In essence, it's a very scalable solution. It's very built around the capabilities for small and large teams. It's a very simple per user per month subscription. So again, it's a cloud-based solution, so there's no implementation locally in any shape or form. You just need a browser and an internet connection in order to use the solution. It's £42.50 per user per month, and that scales with volume. What's worth just noting is that obviously that volume curve that we're showing you there is basically what we refer to as a price plan, and for every additional user you add in, the cheaper they get cumulatively, if you like. But I use the word price plan specifically because at the point where you subscribe to Hornbill, you subscribe to a price plan, so that means that the curve is mapped out based on the price that you subscribe at. And that becomes important in the context of the next slide here, which is basically a concept that we've introduced which is unique to Hornbill, which is called price for life. And unlike any of the other SaaS vendors that we're aware of out there, we have a commitment that says that the price you sign up to, the plan you sign up to, is fixed for the life of your Hornbill contract. So as long as you're a customer, we will ensure that you're insulated against any increases in price. So over time, it is possible that this Hornbill Service Manager will go up in price as it becomes more functional, and as a consequence of the price going up, you don't want to be hit with a bigger bill next year or the year after potentially. So we offer all our customers a price for life guarantee, which basically means you never have to worry about the price changing. So the price you subscribe to is the price you pay for life. But more importantly, if we do actually reduce the price over time through economies of scale or finding better ways of delivering our service, we actually give you the opportunity or the right within your contract to actually ask to go on for the cheaper plan. So again, it's just a standout function within our contract that adds a little bit more value back to you as a customer and gives you that less risk, if you like, going forwards in terms of the costs. There's a few other promises that we make around training, so just to cover that very quickly before I go into the next one, we've got a train for life policy, which also it's come out of the sort of the back of our experience with Supportworks, where typically there's one or two people within any given organisation that have the knowledge on how to administer and manage Supportworks. And one of the challenges we've seen over the years is that when that person gets promoted, moves on, typically there are challenges internally with taking Supportworks forwards, and obviously there's typically costs associated with training people up and so forth. So our Train for Life policy basically is about embracing the fact that you do have a subject matter expert at your organisation. They will likely get promoted, move on at some point, and at that point we will take on the cost and the effort of training that person up to replace them. So all you need to do is let us know who that person is, and we'll take on that burden, if you like. So again, it's about reducing the risk and exposure you have of being sat there with a tool that doesn't have anyone internally who understands how it works or how to configure it going forwards, so you get the best out of it. So in terms of what happens next from today, obviously we're going to answer any questions that have been posted, and happy to do that going forwards if you have any further questions. But in essence, what we'd ask you to do is put it to the test. Don't just take our word for it, put it to the test. Okay, and what that means from our perspective is we'll happily give you the solution for free for 30 days, and we'll happily implement it for free for 30 days. And when we talk about implementation, I'll go into a bit more detail in a second. But in essence, we'll go at this as if we're migrating you for real. And at the end of that 30-day period, you then have a decision to make as to whether it's fit for purpose in your organisation or not, and we'll come back and talk about that in a second. But during those 30 days, what you can expect from us is we'll allocate a product specialist to you, and that person will work with your nominated contact or contacts to provide a migration package, in essence, to move you and your data effectively across from Supportworks into Service Manager so that you can really see the system up and running. What they'll work on is areas such as integration, so email, Active Directory. We'll work to bring through any static data, so it might be asset data or other user data, customer data, site data, whatever data you need to bring through into the system. Further to that, we'll help you to import and move any configurations across, so if you've got any service levels that you have in Supportworks that you need mapping across, things like your categories, all of those sorts of aspects, and help you set that up, including helping you set up apps like the Document Manager app if you want to start going down the route of using that for knowledge management within the Hornbill platform. And last but not least, a couple of things here: help you configure, setting things up, give you advice on what can be achieved and not achieved, and most importantly, obviously mapping across any business process workflows that you have into the system, so helping you get your change management up and running, for example. So all of that's encapsulated within this 30-day process, which we call a switch on, and we have plenty of proof points of existing customers who've already undertaken that and managed to get across and live within that time frame. So speak to your RM if you want to get some more details about that all. Well, ultimately, at the end of that 30-day period, you've got a production-ready system with your data in there, with your integration set up, and that gives you a really strong position from which to make a decision as to whether you want to progress with using Hornbill Service Manager or continue back with Supportworks. So ultimately, at the end of that 30 days, the decision is yours to either accept and move forward with Service Manager or to reject the solution and carry on using Supportworks. But either way, the risk is completely taken away in that you haven't had to commit any cost. You haven't had to commit to taking on the solution or the move until the point where you've actually seen it up and running. And if all fails, then you still walk away having just invested those 30 days to have a look at Service Manager going forward. Okay. Again, speak to your RM for more detail. So we've had a very detailed demo from Steve. I know we've had a number of questions, so let's go in and have a look at some of those questions very quickly. The first one I had here was perhaps one for you, Steve, which is around assets. So I know we didn't specifically touch on assets during the demo, but firstly, can we record assets? Is there a CMDB, and more importantly, how do I get my assets in there? Was the question around potential integration with SCCM, for example.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So recording your assets or CIs, most definitely. Recording the definable information about those assets and CIs, depending on the types and classes you use, is all there. Asset histories, associating documents, relating your assets to one another, the assets that underpin the services, all of that is available. Pulling your data through, there are a number of options. One is that you may have static data like mobile phone lists. You can import those via CSV. If you've got dynamic data using tools like SCCM, Satira, Snow, whatever it might be, then we have a utility that will reside with you on your infrastructure. You'll do all the mappings and the lookups to that data, and then using our APIs on a scheduled basis, you'll just pump your data in for new and updates to existing assets.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. I guess just expanding on that, so we can do the same with Active Directory as well.
Oh, for users, absolutely, yeah, those options are available to you as well.
Brilliant. So we have another question here about the migration package and the question around being able to pull through historic Supportworks call data.
Yeah, definitely. So again, as you've alluded to, we offer our switch on actually to prospects or customers, and we go over and above for our existing Supportworks customers, and as part of that, if you have a desire to migrate some or all of your existing call data, then that is part of that migration package that we offer. So that information will be ported into Service Manager, viewable and accessible going forwards.
Brilliant. Okay, and we had a couple of questions here around data and data centers and security. So perhaps I can take that one. So in essence, the first question was around where are our data centers? Well, in essence, our data centers, if you subscribe in the EU, are actually in the UK. We obviously have data centers in the US and in Asia Pac if you wanted to subscribe in those geographies as well. But for the most part, if you're in the UK and you're subscribing to Hornbill, your data center is going to be in the UK. That's both the primary and the secondary. And as part of our terms of service, your data is secured under the Data Protection Act and will not leave the EU from that perspective. So that's all in there. As an organisation, we're ISO 27001 certified, and obviously that comes with all of the benefits and the surety that you know that we're looking after your data to that level.
Great. I think we've got one more question here, maybe one of the eagle-eyed ones on there. Just looking at the price for life offer that you referred to. You used the term that price for life is valid for the length of your contract. on it. Maybe it's worth just touching on the contracts and...
Yeah, so again, we talked about contract. I mean, one of the key things we've done with Service Manager is to try and break the mold in terms of SaaS contracts. So one of the things that you'll find when you speak to pretty much 100% of SaaS vendors is that typically they'll look to tie you in for a minimum term, and the basic principle behind that is they need to recover the cost of having sold you the solution, if you like, and over time that typically looks at around 12 months or that sort of period. So for the most part, a SaaS vendor will try and tie you in for 12 months or more to ensure that they A, recover the cost of having sold you the solution, and then B, get into the black, if you like, in terms of generating revenue from you as a customer. So one of the things we've tried to do is to avoid getting into the lock-ins, if you like. So we don't actually lock you in as a customer in any shape or form. So one of the mechanisms in our contract is that you have the right to terminate for convenience, which basically means that you can terminate at any point for any reason without giving us any notice. So whilst we talk about a contract, there is no actual term. You do subscribe. It's an annual subscription. If 6 months in you decided it wasn't for you, you can terminate, and we will give you a refund. But your contract is for as long as it's a rolling contract. Basically, it's for as long as you want to be a customer. And one of our principles that Jerry, our CEO, has laid down is that we want to have happy customers, not contractually bound customers, and that plays into that whole piece as well. So, very good question.
Right.
Brilliant. Well, I think if there's no further questions, we'll draw things to a close. Obviously, we've recorded the session, and I'm going to hand over to Sarah. But thanks very much for your time today, guys and ladies. And we will hand over to Sarah here to wrap up.
Thank you, Abdi and Steve, for taking us through that presentation. I hope everyone found it useful. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact me or your relationship manager. Finally, thank you everyone for your time today. Goodbye.